Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time this morning to join us for our Pamoja corporate philanthropy session. We're very honored today to have Ms. Nolita Mvunelo from the Club of Rome, who's the principal for cultural transformations, and she'll be talking to us today about youth changing systems, but also youth agency. We are very honored to have you join us, Nolita, and I know it's going to be a really important and impactful session, not only because within the South African context, we are dealing with a lot of youth concerns and youth issues. But I think what's more important is how do we really prepare ourselves to be active agents of change, but also to understand that the systems that we are working with and working for are within our reach of power to transform and change. So we're really interested in how you're gonna basically change our insights and shift our perspective and understanding better how we can understand systems change. So I'm going to hand over to you, and you are very welcome to this session. And please, if you've got any questions, please feel free to put them on the comment, and Nolita will have a look at those as the session goes. Thank you so much, Nolita, and over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the welcome to this gathering. As Sandile mentioned, I am principal for cultural transformations at the Club of Rome. By way of background, I did my undergraduate in chemical engineering, and I'm doing my master's in environmental humanities. So I'm inspired by two things, because, as my mother probably always has nightmares about this, why did my child in engineering leave her job in engineering? It's because I'm inspired by two things. One is that I really like the challenge of wicked problems because I think that as Africans, we can't accept that there are things that are too wicked for us to solve because the challenges we're facing are complex, but they're critical for us to meet to ensure that there is equitable well-being on a healthy planet. And two is like my self-image is that I am an entrepreneur and I'm a builder, and so I'm really excited for the opportunity to share some of the work that we've been building at the Club of Rome that is looking at cultural transformations through youth agency. Okay, next slide. And so when I zoom out into our context and the systemic challenge, the first one is that, as I mentioned earlier about wicked problems, we seem to be living through a crisis of complexity. Like the world is interconnected. Something that's happening in Iran can create consequences for a young person in the Eastern Cape where they can't go to school. And all of these things are connected to one another. But at the same time, our capacity to act on the world, our being like the capital O as human beings, has outpaced our ability to understand it. By this, I mean the things that we can have as an influence over the environment are seemingly greater than our ability to really understand the consequences of those actions. And in this book here, which was a book published back in 1978 by the Club of Rome called No Limits to Learning, it calls this gap the human gap. And it's not only a gap in knowledge, meaning our ability to understand complexity, because I think like with computers and AI, we're getting a little bit better at some of this mapping, but it's also a gap in meaning making. What does it mean to live in a society that's structured this way? What is our role in a society that's structured this way? What are we capable of transforming? What should we be inspired and dedicated to changing? And one of those challenges, specifically in South Africa, is that in a country that's alive with possibilities, youth that are aged between 15 and 34, they only represent 34.7 of the population, but they face 45.5% of unemployment. And despite this, we haven't yet, as a country, as a people, found ways to systematically include young people in the nation building processes. And these are the processes that will most profoundly shape their futures and create opportunities for them in the future. And by nation building, I mean meaning making, such as like participating in like civic and democratic spaces, but I also mean in terms of innovation and in terms of how much agency they have over their education, and all different parts of society. And so, with this in mind, my view is that cultural transformation is not peripheral to the crisis. It's not the thing we do after we meet material needs, but actually, cultural transformation is the site where change begins. It is the change in values, in the narratives, in the mindset that define what we consider progress and what we consider a good life. And from that meaning, we are then able to really open a wide space of possibilities for ourselves. And I'm going to share here a quote by Wangari Maathai, who was a Nobel Prize winner from Kenya and an environmentalist. And this is how the quote goes. She says, "I was inspired by the traditional African stool that has three legs and a basin to sit on. To me, the three legs represent three critical pillars of just and stable societies. The first leg stands for the democratic space, where rights are respected, whether they're human rights, women's rights, children's rights, and environmental rights. The second represents sustainable and equitable management and resources. The third stands for cultures of peace that are deliberately cultivated within communities and nations. And the basin or the seat represents society and its prospects for development. Unless all three of the legs are in place, supporting the seat, no society can thrive. Neither can its citizens develop their skills and creativity. When one leg is missing, the seat is unstable. When two legs are missing, it is impossible to keep any state alive. And when no legs are available, the state is as good as a failed state. And that is why it is cultural transformations become critical, but also youth agency also becomes critical in that, is that we need all hands on deck in creating better futures for ourselves. And so we being the Club of Rome, see it as like a yin and yang, mutually reinforcing, mutually informing, that the transforming material conditions requires reshaping cultural mindsets. Reshaping cultural mindsets also requires material conditions, because we also can't imagine ourselves into a better future. We need to deal with the realities that are in front of us. And so I present to you the 50%, which is a youth initiative that was created and supported by the Club of Rome. It is led primarily by young people and also collaborates with youth focused organizations. Our approach to youth agency for systemic change, for those who are familiar with Cynthia Rainier and Francois Bonucci's the systems work of social change, we've organized our work very much inspired by that book. So our activities focus on the following: is like building a sense of we-ness. Building a sense of community is important so that we can connect young people with other young people who are interested and working on similar projects and activities, who are interested also in exploring similar deep problems and wicked issues, having debates, having discussions, connecting with one another. We have stories of young people from Indonesia attending an online call and then going to university in the US and then meeting young people that they've met in an online call in US. Like, we're really building a global community of young people collaborating with one another. And then the big one is on equipping problem solvers. So what types of skills, what types of capacity building and learning opportunities need to be created so that young people can start to understand, to learn, to grapple with some big picture questions, such as like water availability in communities, or how do we ensure that laundry is less of a taxing process for women in the Philippines, which is like a real problem that a group is working on right now. And then the third one is on promoting platforms. So how do we create an exchange across generations, but also across power spectrums? Across generations is important because for any of you who have worked in youth movements or youth work, is that, it's always young people saying, we need to transform society. And then senior generations saying, oh, these young people are so naive. They don't know how to actually do it. And so to overcome some of these barriers, what we try to do is to create opportunities for these types of exchange, but also real opportunities for young people to start to practice the things they've learned. So how do we give them access to jobs? How do we support their innovations? Those who are activists and politically inclined, how do we start to support their engagement at the community level so that they can start to exchange with other people, but also start to navigate what it means to try to engage across power spectrums? How do they learn how to be young people who are capable of engaging with their mayor, with a policymaker? How do they learn to be young people who are capable of engaging as an intern with their CEO to propose new projects or opportunities? And then the third one, as we build this momentum over time, we're really interested in disrupting policies. So transformation goes beyond participating, but it's really then becomes critical that we start then influencing so we can go to a systemic level of impact. And that is how our journey works with young people, that they go from being part of a community, learning a skill, engaging in a platform, to really then influencing the systems that are around them. And that's how youth agency and systems thinking can be leveraged for cultural transformation. But I'll go a little bit deeper on what I mean about the different things, looking specifically at this project as at the 50% as a project and a case study on the building a sense of we-ness. So we're looking at fostering a culture of belonging and shared responsibility to develop virtuous leaders for systemic change. By virtuous, we mean those who have fortitude, those who see themselves as people persevering. We are trying to build a community of young people who see themselves as people capable of transforming their societies. Our activities largely span on raising awareness. So we'll attend and or host events in different countries. This is in Costa Rica, this is in Argentina, this is in Kenya. We've done over 10 over the past 5 years of in-person gatherings. We also we do a lot of social media. We work with young people to create content and material about their specific context. Can we have a young lady from Brazil sharing with us a blog or even a full-on magazine about that she convenes with other young people about the state of Rio. And we publish work like that for young people on the platform because we found it to be a good stepping stone, one, for them to find community, but two, for them to be able to start to gain that credibility for themselves as people who are growing in influence in their specific spheres of interest. And I mentioned the convening and then the building community. So we have a community app, we have a WhatsApp channel where they exchange and engage and share opportunities with one another. And over the past 4 years, we've roughly been able to reach 3,000 young people over 35 countries. On the equipping problem solvers. So this bucket of activities very much looking at the idea that when young people learn the fundamentals of systems thinking and storytelling, we then begin to unlock their creative capability that makes systems change inevitable. We find that they can then become bold leaders who are equipped for complex decision-making in their roles. They also are inspired to embrace long-term and transformative projects, and also they're inspired to pursue sustainability. So if I'm to pause to give examples about this on the complex decision-making in their roles, working with young people around systems thinking and then working with business analysis cases, they're able to really then start to look at big picture considerations around the supply chain of a coffee factory, for example, which is a real example of an example they were looking at, or optimizing waste management processes for a municipality in Tanzania, or pursuing sustainability, working with businesses, small and medium-sized businesses as they design sustainability agendas. Our young leaders are in companies trying to drive this transformation. And also the amazing thing that they've done is they have over time started publishing reports and toolkits that other young leaders can use to learn in future. And we're getting this considerable positive feedback even from educators, especially this Young Person's Guide to Systems Change, which has reached over 100,000 people. A lot of the feedback we get from teachers is, oh my gosh, this has been some of the easiest to read literature that I could give to my students to learn about systemic transformation. And similarly with storytelling. And then one of the more recent one is on how to get things done. Because one lesson that we had pretty recently was that when you learn to think systemically, sometimes you can get arrested in the complexity of what you're trying to understand. You get lost in the levels of the nodes, the different partners that are involved, the stakeholders, et cetera, et cetera. And so the feedback we were getting from young leaders is that, okay, I just found myself really struggling to figure out how to get started. I identified a key set of problems, I identified a leverage point, but now I'm like, how do I build a social enterprise? How do I build a project? And so we worked with the responsible project management organization, and we developed this toolkit for responsible project management. So over the past couple of years, we've been able to have 18 cohorts of about 20 participants each. These are done primarily online. We've had about 4 that are done in person. And now we're at a stage where to do both the building a sense of we-ness and the equipping problem solvers at the same time, we're establishing regional hubs so young people can meet in person in their cities. So we have one in Argentina, one in Kenya, one in the Philippines, one in Bangladesh, and we have a South African one that's in progress, likely to start finding its feet over the next year. on promoting platforms, as I mentioned. It's about opening spaces where generations can turn shared learning and unique perspectives into collective intelligence and action. So, as you see from the journey, we went from convening in community, equipping problem solvers, and now we are creating opportunities for young people to engage, intergenerationally and across power spectrums. And we do this in many different formats, but these are two of our primary formats. The first one is a sustainable business internship. So these are young people working in small and medium enterprises that have specific sustainability agendas that they want to implement. The young people are placed in that organization as like the human resource capacity. We partnered with an organization that does sustainability impact reporting for small and medium enterprises. And what they said was that the feedback they consistently got from organizations they consulted with was that the findings are great and all, but they don't have the human capacity to get this work started or going. And so we found that as like, okay, there's a problem. And we also have a need to start creating platforms for young people to access jobs. And so that's how that relationship was created. And the second one is on the Climate Impact Fellowship, which is a similar model, but now at a continental scale. With 60 young people in organizations working on in advisory and consultation positions around driving different initiatives in organizations, both on social justice, climate justice, and also on sustainability in different international organizations, public offices, nonprofits, and startups. And then the last one on disrupting policies, we're looking at how do we center youth perspectives and youth affairs to reshape policy for a changing world. How we do this is through reports and research. So we've been doing reports. There's also another one in progress right now with the United Nations Youth Office, one that's focused on business, and the one that's coming out this year is going to be focused on public office. We're looking at how intergenerational collaboration can help unlock innovation and sustainability. And in the public office one is on intergenerational collaboration to help unlock youth engagement processes in public office in national engagement processes. We also have a book coming out in early next year. That is a book specifically about the role of young people in transforming societies, and this will be done with UNESCO Most Bridges. And we do a lot of engagements and key events. So this is a picture of me with the Deputy Mayor of Cape Town and the former Minister of Environment for South Africa, and also engaging a lot with the UN in Nairobi, as you saw, because we have a Nairobi hub. And then we also do engage in strategic advisory. What we find is that either through international organizations, nonprofits, and increasingly even private companies, they often have the question of what do we do with the young people? We need advice about what to do about the young people. How do we connect with young people? And so increasingly over time, the 50% finds itself consulting with and to different organizations on advisory around engagement for young people and youth affairs. And that is also how we're engaging in policy. I believe that that's where my presentation ends. I wanted to keep it brief on just sharing insight on how we're driving a cultural transformation through youth agency. Thank you so much.
Um, Thank you so much, Nolita. I think this also gives us an opportunity to actually interact with some of the content that you've shared. I think you're really doing incredible work, and it's amazing that this is a global initiative, but it's also Club of Rome is a significant global organization. And I think one of the very unfortunate things that we South Africans go through is that we overly domesticated in how we approach systems change. So we try to use tools that only have existed within our communities to effect change. But actually, it's more powerful when we start adopting tools that are international, that have worked in other countries, and then try to see how we can reshape them to make them relevant to our context. So I think having someone like you play that role is absolutely significant and exciting. But I think my question really is, how do we get involved? I think a lot of us in this room are in many ways practitioners in youth development, in development work, but in many ways we are also leaders in our own communities. And I'm wondering, how do we lean into the work of the Club of Rome so that we can also maybe amplify South Africa's relevance in cultural transformations? I think that's a question for me, but I'm going to open it up to anyone else that may want to come in and maybe add a comment or ask a question or engage with you directly. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. I will answer in the meantime. And then if anyone would like to ask a question, please like raise your hand. I also have the chat open. I can read it. In terms of ways to get involved. So if it is specifically regarding engaging with young people, as you saw in the presentation, we're looking to establish our South Africa hub. But I've had a lot of big picture questions about how to do it properly for the same reasons you're mentioning, Sandy. Like how do we do it in a way that really focuses on South Africa because it's a South Africa hub, but also is like great at connecting young people to this international community. What I found anecdotally, as my experience as a young person in the environment space, is that it's not very connected. You like sometimes I will be attending a conference and then there will be a speaker saying, "This is the South African youth representative on ABC." And I'll be like, "I've never heard of this man. Who is this man? I've been working in this field for 4 years. I've never heard of this person." So the first thing would be, I will put my email in the chat. I'd really love to connect so we can learn more and find ways to collaborate with one another. The second one is that if you have young people that are within your sphere of work or influence, I will also share a link. If I don't share it in the chat, I'll share it with Sandile, who then they can sign up to our channels because we are continuously releasing opportunities there. For example, we had an internship, a policy competition that led to that leads to an internship within the Club of Rome. And we tend to often make these things primarily available to 50 percenters. And so if you have young people who, would be important for them to sign up, those would be the types of things. I mean, I think we have like 3 posts that are live and like they're almost expressly like specifically for young people because the Club of Rome is very conscious about it being maybe I should take a step back. Club of Rome is an association. It is a membership organization of business leaders, former politicians, academics, and activists who come together to design holistic solutions for complex problems. And so for them, youth leadership becomes a holistic solution to a complex problem of how do we engage different parts of society to the sustainability challenge. And so, but because it's a membership of notable people, Wangari Maathai was a member when she was still alive, they tend to be on the older side. So for them, it's a conscious decision to let young people lead the activities of the Club of Rome to drive it into the 21st century. And so these opportunities are always available on a rolling basis if young people are in the network and they're aware and have access to it. And they get like special access to even Club of Rome members themselves. One thing I didn't mention is that we do these like master classes and intergenerational dialogues where Club of Rome members come and share their work, which also solves that problem of I want to build a project, but I don't know if it works. Well, imagine if you could learn from Rampela herself is one of the things that like we try to organize on like how to build social change movements or something along those lines. Okay, I see a question from Ayabulela. What is one thing young people can start doing today to prepare for the future economy? Oh, that's a good question that I might not be the best equipped to answer. I would say that the reason why we focused on systems thinking is that we felt that it was important for young people to be able to navigate the complexity of the future, to not find themselves in a position where they're overwhelmed by how much information they're receiving, how helpless they're feeling, how many challenges are happening all at once. Like every day we're hearing something new on the news about the problems that are happening. While also at the same time, like it is a science. And so the more they pursue it, the more they're able to learn about like complex adaptive mapping, et cetera, which are things that they then can be able to use in their careers. I am still trying to learn about how this intersects with like the labor market in the context of AI. Like I don't know how that interacts with it, but that is the current thesis that we're working on, is that if young people try to put themselves in a position where they're able to understand, vet, and even learn. Because even if you're working with ChatGPT or whatever, you still need to be someone who's able to understand why it told you what it told you. That's why we chose that as the leverage point that we're prioritizing for now. I hope it answers the question. Tsepo, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Nolita, for the powerful presentation. Truly amazing work, and congratulations to you and your team for that. I wanted to ask, what's your assessment currently of the unique challenges that South African youth especially might be facing in terms of accessing something like this, or being part of a program like this? I think my mind automatically goes to people in rural places in villages where internet access is still a barrier, where access to computers and other things is still a barrier. How does something so powerful, something that could change the trajectory of a whole generation, filter to people who are on the outskirts, per se, of even the conversation that we're having? How do we ensure from an equity lens that everything that we're saying, everything that we're building, does not leave out people that are already systemically left out of development and growth and upward mobility?
Thank you. That's a very important question. And we have had some successes, but also some failures in trying to figure this out. As I mentioned previously, like in the context of South Africa, I'm still very much trying to learn, but part of my focus on even like, because our hubs are in cities, they're not in countries, because I wanted it to be, or towns, I wanted it to be specific within the region and accessible to the young person. So then we like, obviously when we were talking about South Africa, we are like, oh, we should do Durban, because Durban is interesting. Is that like it's a city, it's a pretty big city, but it's also like Durban is connected enough to like rural communities that you could do exchanges and all that stuff. It's not like Joburg where you'd need to drive 4 hours to, get a population density that's less than a certain amount. But as you can tell, we're still very much oriented around cities, which is a learning curve that we need to have. What we found though, because in the hub that's in Argentina, it's in a town called Santiago del Estero. And it's a town, so it's not fully rural, but it's one of those where like most of the people work an agricultural job. What we found there is that most things have to be in person. So the capacity building work that we do there is actually convened and Tepa just jumped off. Okay. I will still I'll complete my answer. Are convened and executed by people who live in the town. So they are not done online. And also because of the language barrier, because they speak Spanish, it's done in Spanish. The other thing that we do is that we try to make transport and or data available to young people, either through by just like sending them money or organizing transport to go to gatherings and attending specific events over time. And also part of the reason why we invested in supporting young people in creating these toolkits and guidebooks. We also have like card games and stuff, is that they then become like tangible things that they can engage with and interact with over time. We hand them out as pamphlets that are printed rather than saying like join online. My next high ambition goal is to see if we can get like an app going, one that's like pretty light on data, one that allows people to download stuff locally or have it accessible offline, but it's very expensive. So we're still fundraising and looking for partners that can support that. So we can do these learning programs also for people who are in far remote areas where the cost to convene might be like higher than we're capable of right now. And yeah, so that's the considerations that we have and things that we've done previously, but there's still a lot of learning that we need to do around getting out of the city mode. Also, even like working only with university students, we had to be very conscious about how do we use language that students or young people who only have a matric are able to understand. We're not quite there yet, but we've made a lot of improvements also on that, because we were finding that like young people who are like part of a society in university are like, oh yeah, this is one of the societies I'm a part of, which is good. But how do we open the space so that more young people can participate is also one of the big things. So the de-jargonizing of our language is a big thing that we're trying to figure out. While at the same time, the young people are like, a lot of the young people who work in the team have master's degrees. So they're struggling. They're already too much in academia to make it work. In the chat, I see a question by Teddy. Teddy is one of our sustainability interns, I think. I'm currently working on building a youth-led platform for young people in Kenya. I'm still defining the main problem it should solve. From your experience, what's one piece of advice you'd give someone starting a platform like this? Teddy, I think we should have a conversation separately about this because you have my number. We can talk about it. We can really brainstorm. But but if I were to try to give an idea of the main problem you should solve, I'd say speak to young people and let them tell you what's the main problem you should solve. You shouldn't try to figure it out from your desk, sitting by yourself, because then what's going to happen is you're going to invest a lot of time into a problem that doesn't actually exist. So have you spoken to your peers? What do your peers say that they're interested in? What are the challenges your peers say they are facing? Let's talk about what it could look like to do, I guess, quote unquote, customer interviews and have a discussion with them. And then from there, you will likely find that there are a certain set of things that are not yet addressed or could be better addressed. Yeah, but also you're part of our platform. So maybe it's more about building a program within the 50%. Let's have a discussion another day about it. Yeah. If anyone
Okay,
else has a
great. I think
question.
we still have about 5 minutes. I don't know if anyone else has any more questions. I think while we're still waiting, maybe I can go ahead and just ask about what has been your most significant highlight that you've noticed from any of the countries you've worked in terms of youth agency. In other words, where should we look to see exemplary models that have worked in terms of youth changing their systems in their country?
Um, I'll share an anecdote that's not necessarily youth changing systems, but really created perspective for me about what the challenge is. Is the first time we were in Nairobi doing a young person's guide to systems change workshop, the first feedback I got from someone was, oh my gosh, this is the first time that an international organization has called us for a workshop, and they weren't trying to teach us a framework or anything. They were just trying to ask us questions about our context, and they were speaking to us as if we were people capable of changing the system ourselves. And that for me was like a significant moment. I was like, okay, I understand what is going on here. And this is where the opportunity might be, is really giving the agency to young people rather than saying, here's your 5-point bullet point about how you're going to change your society. In terms of an example where young people became influential in their space, I'll go back to Santiago del Estero in Argentina. So we have about, if I remember correctly, 200 young people who are actively engaged in that hub. And they are currently running the municipality, the government is running local municipal elections. Now, they are so effective in their work on like youth changing systems that their like political leaders are asking them to host rallies on their behalf around and town halls on their behalf around what are the problems that our county is facing. And for me, when I heard this news, I was like, this is crazy. When we first started, we didn't think that this is, I mean, we had an ambition, right? We had an ambition that the young people would start like changing the society. I didn't expect that it would get to a point where they're hosting town halls and debates with their mayor. The mayor is sitting there, the young people are asking him questions because he wants to engage them, he wants to work with them. So for me, that was like a significant moment. And I'm very curious to see, especially in South Africa, as local elections become more and more effective, how does an eThekwini hub start to have, you know, the award counselors in a session with them, having discussions around progress, well-being, you know, sustainability. That would be an amazing accomplishment in my eyes.
Again, thank you so much, Nolita. I don't know if anyone else has any final comments to share. We still about 2 minutes, but otherwise, I think I also might take this opportunity to thank you so much, Nolita, for engaging with us. Maybe you can put your email on the chat so that everyone can, kind of discuss with you if they want to outside of this. Because I know there's some incredible people in this room that would absolutely love to be in direct contact with you and maybe to invite you to speak or maybe to join the new platform that you'll create in South Africa, or maybe invite you to co-create those platforms with them. You never know the outcomes of these kinds of sessions. But thank you so much again for your time, and we wish you all the best as you continue to lead us into different parts of the world and to represent South Africa as well as represent Africa. And we are incredibly honored to have leaders like you that really take up global space and make it look diverse, inclusive, but also real. Because as you know, the biggest number of young people is in Africa, and so global voices should not be void of African voices leading the conversation. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful day, Nolita.
Thank you so much. Those are very kind words. And thank you everyone for joining. My email's in the chat and I look forward to collaborating in future. Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.